Hey guys, it's your girl Cecilia, back at it again with another video. So today we are going to be really salty, but today we are going to be filming my worst books of 2018. Now this video is going to get controversial, I can already guarantee that, but it's going to be fun. I hope y'all like this. Please, before I start the video, if you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe, rate. But yes, I am going to be talking about 8 different books. A few of them are very popular and very beloved, so that'll be a thing. Please don't roast me in the comments. I don't need that. I don't care enough. So let's get into this. The number 8 book on this list is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. I despise this book. It took me about a year to finish. Now let me explain. So I checked on Goodreads, and when I first started reading this book, I started reading it December 22nd of 2017, and I finished it December 1st of 2018. So it almost took me it took me about 11 months, like 11 months to a year to read this book. The first 2/3 of the book was so boring. I don't know what it was that just didn't like vibe with me, but it was just so incredibly boring. I didn't start to get even remotely invested until chapter 15. I specifically remember it was chapter 15 because that was the chapter when I think it was Slytherin and was it Slytherin? I think it was Slytherin and or it might have been Hufflepuff. I don't remember, when they was having the like last Quidditch match where Gryffindor won. That's not really a spoiler. But like, I don't know, I think J.K. Rowling writes really great Quidditch scenes, and so that whole chapter I was like so hyped, but then everything else just felt very lackluster to me. The twist at the end really didn't surprise me. I didn't actually know the twist of this book because this book is so unmemorable to me, at least in the grand scheme of the Harry Potter world. And this book, I feel like you could have totally just not had this book in the series, and I feel like it wouldn't have taken away from the story. I feel like we didn't really get a lot of character development in this story. We didn't really get a lot of action. We didn't get a lot of overall plot to add to the story. Just this book really didn't do anything for me. Really didn't help. Didn't add anything to the world. It was just not good. It was just really not good. Alright, so number 7 on this book I had read in February, and I listened to it on audiobook, and this is Ronit and Jamil by Pamela L. Laskin. I really should have listened to Goodreads ratings, because this has an average rating of 2.88 stars on Goodreads with 1,000 ratings. That's so not good. Basically what this book is about, it is a retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but set during the Israeli-Pakistan conflict. The main thing about this is that it was very boring and it was very repetitive. I noticed that the characters kept repeating their motivations and repeating everything they were saying. I swear, it's not a very long book, so you don't need to be repetitive. You just stay what you are, but I feel like there was no plot. I feel like this could have easily been a short story, and I think I would have liked it a lot more, but it being a full-length novel, like this book even wasn't very long at all. This book was 192 pages, and it felt long. It needed to be maybe like 70 pages, and I feel like it could have been very effective, but it was just too long, too repetitive. Not a fan. Alright, so number 6 is another controversial one, and this is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. I talked about this in my November wrap-up, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. But what I wanted to say was that if you don't know this book, this is the second book in the Wayward Children series, and I love the first book. I gave the first book 5 stars. And why I hated this book was that I felt like it was very unnecessary. I am very critical about series, and what I mean by critical about series is that I feel like if nothing happens in the book, then why is the point of that book being published, or like what is the point? So I personally feel like this book, I didn't feel like I needed it. I really didn't. This takes place in Jack and Jill's perspective, which weren't my favorite characters, but also like I didn't hate them, and I feel like so I was talking to some people on Twitter and they're saying like, oh, maybe did you wish that it was longer? And I thought at some points it was too long and dragged. The parts that I actually thought were interesting, like Jack's relationship, she had a relationship to a woman in this story, and I feel like we got like maybe a page of that, but we had about 50 pages of the parents before and right when Jack and Jill were babies, and I'm like, this doesn't help me. This is not, we could have done that in maybe 10 pages, but we didn't need like a damn fourth of the book dedicated to the parents. I don't care. I just like, I think just the pacing was off. I think that was just my issue with it, is that the things that I didn't care about were like such big parts of the book, and parts that I actually cared about were like summarized in a page. And I just wish that that things were just laid out differently. I feel like if they were laid out differently, this book could have easily been a 4-star read, but since they weren't, it's more like a 3 to 2-star read. All right, so the next one on my list, I think this is number 5. Number 5 is The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. I read this, I believe, in January. Like, you follow a girl named Ruth, and basically her and her sister in this small town in the 1970s. There was a lot of, like, it was, let me just flat out say it, this book was boring. There was, I felt like there was very little plot. It was just mainly just her just going through life. Sometimes I am a plot-driven reader, but I'm okay with no plot if I am compelled by the characters. If I love the characters and I love what they're doing, but I got none of that. I didn't really care about any of the characters. The main character, Ruth, kind of really pissed me off. She just, to me, wasn't a very interesting character to be the perspective of for most of the book. I just felt like I just kept dragging on through this story. I kept reading and reading, and I felt like years were getting taken off my life because it was that boring. I felt like I was reading this book for so long, but only took like a week to read it. Yeah, that basically summarized my beliefs of the book. It was just not the greatest. Ooh, I just saw the next book that I wanted to talk about, and I hate this book with a burning passion. Alright, so then number 4 book on this list is Girl in Snow by Danya Kafka. This was my first mystery thriller I've ever read, and I gave it about 1.5 stars. Basically, if I had to summarize how I felt about it, I said this book had a lot of issues. 2 out of 3 of the POVs could have been taken out completely. I read this in October. One of the only books I read in October, which might have been why I was kind of in a little slump during the month of October. So what this book is about is that there is a girl named Lucinda Hayes, and she has been murdered. She is a high school, I think a freshman or sophomore, and she was liked by a lot of people on campus. And so there are 3 perspectives that we get from. We have Cameron, who is basically, everybody knows, is Lucinda's stalker. That he is, I believe, about the same age, maybe a little older as Lucinda, and he basically just like watches her at night. It's very creepy. The second perspective we get is Jade, who, it was basically, Jade's best friend was Lucinda's ex-boyfriend, and Jade blamed Lucinda for stealing her best friend, basically. And then we have Russ's perspectives, who's Cameron's dad and who is a police chief who got discharged, I believe he got discharged from the police force for almost beating a woman to death, which was a whole thing, which was one reason why I didn't like it. There was a whole part of the story where he was brought back on to do this case, even though he did almost beat a woman to death for no reason. And I was just kind of like, so yeah, when I said with 2 out of 3 perspectives totally could have been taken out, they really could have. Russ's perspective, we had it very little, and it added nothing to the story. Literally his perspective was just like of just him complaining about not having, or complaining about missing his ex-wife. That was basically what it was. And it was very annoying. Again, added nothing to the story. And he was also, I feel like, a bad father to Cameron, just gonna say. Jade's perspective also wasn't very necessary. It was only time it was necessary, it was like one scene at the end of the book, but other than that, she didn't add anything to the story. I thought that some of Cameron's dialogue, like his innermost dialogue, was interesting because he didn't feel like he was a stalker to Lucinda. He felt like he just loved her, and that was his version of it's basically saying he loved her. And throughout the bulk of this book, it's kind of shown that that Cameron had killed Lucinda, that people believe it, and that makes sense to me. Like, he stalked her, he followed her constantly everywhere, so why wouldn't he be the killer? But I'm going to put spoilers up because I just need to talk about this one part. I'm going to show you the timestamp of when you can actually fast forward to when I'm done talking about spoilers. Cool, thanks. So you find out at the end of the book that Cameron actually didn't kill her, that Cameron witnessed the whole thing. And he didn't remember this throughout the whole book. He just kind of remembered spontaneously, randomly at the end, which felt very convenient to me. And he remembered seeing that the person who killed Lucinda was actually, she babysat basically like a little 2-year-old baby, and the father of that baby killed her. That father and Lucinda were in a romantic relationship, and I think he accidentally killed her. I actually don't remember. It was just so, it pissed me off because he was barely in the novel anyways. He gave no indication of any of this, and it was just, it felt convenient. It felt dumb. It felt like the author was like, oh, this is spontaneous, it came out of nowhere, but it came so much out of left field to the point where instead of just being surprising and be like, oh, that was really clever, I was more like, the fuck? Like, that made no damn sense. Alright, I'm done with my spoiler section. I just needed to talk about that part. But yeah, didn't like this book. The ratings on Goodreads for this book also are not good at all. It has an average of 3.32 ratings, or 3.32 stars, with 3,875 ratings. That's not good at all. At least in good terms ratings, so didn't enjoy this book. I listened to it on audiobook, and the audiobook just dragged, man. So, number 3, we're on the top 3, which are easily my top 3 worst books, and they're kind of popular, so this is gonna be fun. My number 3 book is The Titan's Curse, the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. Please don't kill me. This book is beloved, this series is beloved, and I just realized in the middle of this book, like literally I wrote one sentence for my feelings of this book, and it literally just said, I found this book in the series incredibly boring, and I did. I think I DNF'd it about 70% of the way through. I actually am trying to remember the plot of this book because I kind of blocked it out of my memory, but because it was just, I felt like I understand it's middle grade, and I personally loved middle grade, so that's not an issue with me. And I like the other 2 books in the series. It didn't really add anything to the story to me. It didn't really expand on the characters' perspectives. It just felt like a huge filler book, and I despise filler books. If there's a filler book, I'm always like, why? There needs to be a reason for you. Like, it's like filler seasons of TV shows. Like, I hate them. There needs to be a reason why they are there. And it just irritated me so much. I don't want to talk about this book anymore than I already have, but that was it. I found it incredibly boring. The next book I have on this is Paper Girls Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan. It is rare that I rate a graphic novel series less than 3 stars because I genuinely love graphic novel stories, but this one was just such a miss. I think I'm actually going to make this one star. This book was the most confusing clusterfuck I have ever felt. Even if you ask me what a synopsis of this book was, I can't even tell you one. It starts off, there is a girl, and she's part of a paper route, and it's on Halloween night, or the morning of Halloween, and she meets up with she finds these other girls who are also paper girls, who would like deliver newspapers, and after that, shit happens. That's all I can explain, just shit happens. It literally felt like, so you know if you normally like take a whole series arc and you say like, oh, this season had this monster and this season had this monster and this season has this arc. It felt like they put all of a whole like arc of material into one small graphic novel, and it felt like there was just too much going on at once. I felt like if this was spread out into multiple, like if everything that happened in the first book was spread out into multiple graphic novels, this would have been great. I would have hella enjoyed it. But it was just so much happening at once. We were just thrown into it with no explanation. And I would have continued on to the other series, or to the other books in this graphic novel series, but I have been heard from some of my friends that they are still confused on like volume like 4, and I'm just like, I have other things to read. I don't want to be confused at volume 4. I want to at least have some understanding of this. And so yes, giving it 1 star. Y'all are gonna hate me for this, for my number 1. This is my number 1. I tried to rank these, but they kind of became out of order. But if I had to switch, it would be this one, and then of course The Paper Girls right afterwards. This book is very beloved on BookTube and I think everywhere else, and I just don't get it. This is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I'm giving this 1 star. 1 star. I read this during the summer, I believe. August. I read this in August. So the premise of this book is that this takes place in a dystopian world, and like basically people don't really die easily. There's no disease, no plague. Like disease and plague are the same thing. No disease, no war, anything like that. People just don't really die from old age either. So the only overpopulation in the society is a big problem. And so in order to kind of get rid of overpopulation, they have Scythes who go through and they basically kill people to control overpopulation, which is an interesting concept. I thought that concept was fantastic, but the execution of it was terrible. I think one of my biggest complaints was the pacing. I read about 80% of this book and DNF'd it. And at 80%, I feel like very little happened. And I think I DNF'd it right before the big climax. But I went and read basically a spoiler like synopsis of the entire book. And once I like read that end part that I had missed, I realized that was boring. The climax that happened at the end was predictable, boring. I feel like I've seen this before. It was just, I wasn't intrigued. I wasn't blown away. I was like, cool, lame, whatever, let's get on with this. I'm a person who loves sci-fi, so I can't say that, oh, maybe this is a new genre, because this is my genre. Sci-fi and fantasy are like my genre. And it's just, I think another aspect of this was, I don't know if it was the writing style, but I felt distance from the book. I feel like when I like to read, I feel like I want to feel engaged. I want to feel like it's kind of my innermost dialogue or something like that. Like I want to feel a part of the story. I felt like I was watching a movie and I felt like I was distanced from it significantly, which was hard for me to get into, hard for me to read. Another aspect is that I hated the main girl. I'm trying to remember her name. I want to say it was Citra. Citra, yes. I hated her. I hated her so much ever since the beginning. I don't know what it was, but I just could not stand her. I really liked Ronan, or Rowan. Rowan was like my boo thing. My boo thing. I enjoyed him. But Citra just ruined the book. Every chapter we had from her perspective, I was just like throughout the entire thing because I just didn't like her. Rowan's chapters I found interesting, but if it was just from his perspective, I probably would have rated this higher. But Citra just kind of brought this book down for me. But yeah, DNF the book at 80%. Not going to continue with the series. Probably not going to keep reading this author. But yes, those were my 8 worst books of 2018. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you had similar feelings to any of these books or if I'm completely wrong. I want to see how other people feel about these books. But that is it for me today. By the way, guys, I just want to do a little announcement that up until the end of January, I'm going to be posting 3 times a week on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So be looking forward to those videos. Alright guys, I will see you in another video. Goodbye!